Nora Hale stood outside the little brick cafe on Alder and 10th, the kind of place that kept its lights low even in daylight, as if trying to protect secrets for people who were too tired to keep them on their own. She cupped her phone like it could steady her breathing and watched her breath blur in the early autumn chill. Her cardigan sleeves were pushed to her knuckles, a small barricade against the tremor that sometimes lived in her hands when the day had asked for more than she had to give. "Blind date," she whispered, and the words had the weak humor of a lullaby sung to no one. What am I even doing? Her best friend, Tamsin, had insisted, and it was easier to agree than to argue. Get out of the apartment. Eat something that wasn't microwaved at 1 a.m. Your mom would want you to keep living. That last part had lodged like a splinter. It had been 6 weeks since the funeral, but grief bends time, and nights can make yesterday feel like forever. She pushed through this door into warmth and the smell of coffee and cinnamon, a bass line of distant jazz humming beneath conversation. She scanned the room and found him in the back. Tall, dark jacket, dark hair as if the day had been combed only where it mattered. He looked up from his phone and she felt that foolish startled skip in her chest that still surprised her. He was handsome in the way of someone who forgot he was. Smile lines waiting, posture ready to carry a load. She walked toward him. "Ethan?" she asked, hopeful but already bracing. He stood fast, polite. "Nora?" She smiled the small nurse's smile she used on parents who had worn the night to its thinnest thread. "Sorry I'm late. I had a morning shift." He blinked like he was recalibrating, then reached into his jacket. "No problem at all. I brought a few notes on the girls, scheduled meals, nap windows, and the whole allergy saga." He folded a paper into her hand with the efficiency of a man used to being 2 places at once. Her smile held, then faltered. "Notes on the girl?" "Yes," he said, slow and steady. "Ava, Junie, and Pura. They're 4. Triplets. I thought the agency would have briefed you, but the last nanny left us a little abruptly." "Oh," she said, heat rising to her face. "I thought, this is embarrassing. I thought this was a date." He stared for a beat, then exhaled the kind of laugh people make when life tips the cup and you just catch it. "A date? I thought you were from the childcare agency." They looked at one another with the brittle awe of 2 people discovering they were in different chapters of the same book. Then laughter, clear and small, spilled from the hallway near the restrooms. 3 little girls in matching pink dresses, curls flying, shoes clacking, ran toward the back table and stopped like birds at a windowsill, startled by their own reflection. Their eyes found Nora. For a suspended second, the cafe hummed on without them. Then all 3 ran, arms lifted, calling out in imperfect unison, "Mommy!" Nora froze, the word cutting through her with both a sting and an ache, a reverberation of something lost and something not yet named. The man, he wasn't Ethan, she would learn later he was Caleb Mercer, stood so fast his chair complained. He started to speak, but the smallest girl reached for Nora's wrist with a hand so warm it seemed to carry summer. "Please don't go," she whispered, the whisper of a child who has already had to make peace bargains with the grown-up world. "You look like our mommy from our dreams." Nora lowered herself to their height without thinking. She found the place in her voice that could hold the fragile and make it feel chosen. "Do I?" she asked, and the question softened the room. The girls hovered like the tide at her ankles, retreating just enough to look up. "Just for today," Nora said gently. "I can be your dream mom if you want. Only if you want." All 3 nodded earnestly, as if they'd been rehearsing in sleep. Caleb cleared his throat, hands up in a brief surrender. "This is clearly a mix-up." His eyes, though, were thankful for how she had steadied what could have shattered. "I'm Caleb," he said, "and these are my girls." "Hi, Caleb," Nora said, because names help when the world turns. "I'm Nora, not from the agency, not a date either, apparently." A quiet laugh. "But I'm a pediatric nurse at St. Bridget's. I can at least help you get them pastries." Sometimes the body decides for you. Nora's hands did what they know. She tied a slipping bow in Junie's hair, dabbed a smudge of jam from Pearl's cheek with a napkin, and cut Ava's croissant into moons. The table turned into a shoreline of crumbs and giggles. Caleb watched, relieved and unnerved, like someone who had been solo at sea and suddenly heard another oar. They left the cafe together because it felt stranger to part there than to keep going. Outside, the day had brightened. The triplets, citizen monarchs of pink, marched in rhythm, and the kind of small talk people do to make crossings began. Nora learned he ran a logistics company that had grown faster than he'd planned, that he was learning how to be many kinds of responsible at once, that sleep had become a rumor. He learned she lived 2 bus stops away, that nights were the hardest, that she kept extra tissues in every bag the way nurses do. He did not ask about the soft hollowness under her kindness, and she did not say that grief had taught her to make room for other people's joy, even when she could barely hold her own. In Caleb's house, a craftsman with wide windows and a backyard oak that looked old enough to mentor, life had fingerprints. The living room bore the evidence of a great ongoing experiment in being 4. Blocks like bright punctuation, books with frayed spines, socks that had eloped. Nora slipped into the rhythm that children recognize, the one where attention feels like shelter. Pearl, the quiet one, peeked from behind a pillow as if the world might startle her back into hiding. Nora crouched on the rug and made a tiny face out of ketchup on toast. 2 dots and a smile with a dot of mustache. Pearl's mouth twitched into its daily miracle, and then a giggle. Junie ricocheted through the room like a small comet, her hair ribbon undone, her need to be seen outpacing the hands that could keep up with it. Nora retied the bow and hummed as she worked. A lullaby from years ago for a brother who once needed night songs. The melody so soft it felt like privacy shared. Ava, the oldest by 6 minutes, appointed herself hostess and asked if Nora preferred apple slices with or without the peel, a question that bravely concealed its real one. Are you going to stay long enough to have a preference? Caleb moved toward the kitchen to gather plates, and Nora touched his arm with a lightness that communicated capability without making a scene. I've got them for a bit, she said with a nurse's rational authority that disguised tenderness. Breathe. Dinner was scrambled together in the way meals are when love is measured in attention more than recipes. Nora made equal plates as if that simple equality could teach something children would need in harder years. She told a story as she stirred and served, something about a kingdom governed by the carrot princess in her mashed potato gown, with broccoli dragons who roared when you forgot to say thank you. It was silly and it was steadying. Pearl coughed mid-laugh and Nora was there, hand on her back, voice low and even. Slow sips, she coached. I'm right here. The coughing passed. Pearl leaned against her. The whole table breathed out. After the dishes were washed, Caleb tried to help and she conscripted him to sit, which might have been the bolder act. Ava tiptoed in with a bear whose ear had given itself up to devotion. This is Mr. Bram, she announced. He's sad about his ear. Nora took the bear the way nurses take newborns and emergencies, as if nothing else exists. Her small sewing kit lived where it always did, in the middle pocket of her bag, next to the pen light and the tiny roll of stickers that said, "You did great." She stitched the ear with a neatness that slowed all 3 girls' breathing, kissed the mended seam with a flourish, and returned Mr. Bram to the arms that had rendered him holy. Caleb stood in the doorway and found himself anchored by the sight. Nora cross-legged on the couch, 3 girls tucked around her in a geometry that felt inevitable. Junie, sugar-drunk and drowsy, had surrendered her cheek to Nora's shoulder. Pearl curled close, hand flat against Nora's sweater like she was checking for weather. Ava lay across Nora's lap, trying to keep her eyes open because sometimes falling asleep means missing what you want to keep. Nora looked up and met Caleb's gaze. That invisible quickening that sometimes announces the beginning of a new chapter moved through the air like heat that could be trusted. She whispered to no one and everyone, "It's been so long since I felt alive." It wasn't a declaration. It was inventory taken at day's end. A week passed like a shy creature, and yet each day made room for the next. Nora told herself the cafe confusion had been a single good accident in a stretch of hard weeks. A thing to keep in her pocket for when the night went mean. But routines make fences people can lean on. And one Saturday, she found herself at Caleb's porch again with a tote bag that said nothing and everything. Ava's pink hair clip, Junie's drawing of a crown labeled Queen Nora, Pearl's tiny sock abandoned mid-play. She rang the bell with the modesty of someone who plans to leave quickly. The door flew open like relief had a sound. "Nora," the girls chorused. And the hug arrived like weather. Caleb came down the hall barefoot, coffee in hand, his smile small and real. "I didn't think we'd see you again," he said, and the honesty of it made the room warmer. "Just returning treasures," Nora said, but the betrayal was in her grin. Inside, the house felt less like an address and more like a heartbeat. There was a new drawing framed above the bookshelf. 5 stick figures with bright smiles, 3 small crowns, and a woman with long yellow hair in the middle. Nora stood in front of it and forgot the choreographed sentences she had brought. Caleb stood beside her with a quiet she trusted. "Lately," he said softly, "they've been drawing families with you in them." She didn't move for the long breath. What she did next wasn't strategic. It was what happens when grief and gentleness braid themselves into courage. "I could come by," she said, not watching him. "Sometimes." The words "sometimes" left the door ajar for the part of her that still remembered how fast life can teach you the cost of hope. Caleb nodded, not too fast, as if agreeing with the future is something you should do carefully. "We'd like that," he said, and the "we" held the right kind of weight. The girls had wandered back into the doorway, pretending to listen to nothing while listening to everything. Nora turned to them. "I'm not a replacement," she said, more to herself than to anyone. "No," Caleb answered, "you're something new." A late light stretched across the floorboards, and for a moment, what had been broken didn't ask to be fixed. It just asked to be held. The next Saturday, the house was humming in a way Nora recognized from the pediatric ward right before visiting hours, a contained excitement that made sound like light under a door. She let herself in with the soft knock Caleb had told her was plenty, and set her bag down just as a chorus of urgent whispers shot through the living room. "Shh, she's here. Hide the sign. Hide it." The whispers tripped over giggles and the slap of socked feet on hardwood, followed by the flutter of paper like birds taking off all at once. Nora raised an eyebrow in the doorway and tried to look surprised instead of undone by the effort it takes children to love you. Caleb appeared from the hallway with a mug, trying and failing to look neutral. "I've been told I'm not allowed to assist," he said. "Classified operation." Before she could answer, 3 small bodies popped up from behind the couch and shouted, "Surprise!" They hoisted a poster almost as big as they were, a blizzard of glitter taped onto cardboard. Letters scrolled in crayon so wide they seemed to sing, "Welcome Queen Mommy." Crowns, hearts, stick figure daisies, and one tiny drawing of a cat wearing a cape covered the margins. Ava stepped forward, solemn as a messenger, with a crown made of yellow pipe cleaners and foam stars. "It's yours," she declared. Junie hopped in place and added, "Only if you want." Pearl, whose courage often arrived last but truest, whispered, "We hope you want." Nora knelt, because kneeling is how you keep a moment at the right size. She let the crown settle into her hair, felt the ridiculousness and the reverence sit together without quarreling. "I am honored," she said, and meant it in the old-fashioned way. They squealed like birds that had finally found the sky, and within minutes she had an apron tied around her waist and 3 more tied around small, excited middles. The kitchen became a laboratory of flour and joy, flour on cheeks like war paint, sugar spilling like sleet, butter softening in a bowl that was always a little too big. "Baking is a science with a sweet tooth," Nora said, guiding their hands to level off a cup of flour with the flat side of a butter knife. She taught them the difference between packed and loose brown sugar and showed them how to crack eggs with confidence instead of fear. Little tap, then a quick thumbs apart. Don't hesitate. Hesitating makes shells. They tried, failed, succeeded, cheered each other. Caleb leaned in the doorway, mug warming his hands, and watched the way Nora's voice made instruction feel like safety. She told a story as they measured, because stories steady the hands and widen the room. A tale about 3 apprentice bakers in a kingdom where kindness was a recipe, where sprinkles were tiny stars you could eat and frosting was the language you used when you didn't have other words yet. When the tray slid into the oven, the air shifted to that patient waiting particular to kitchens and hospitals, the knowing that some things take time and heat to become themselves. Nora wiped a constellation of flour from Junie's nose with her thumb. "I brought you something," she said, digging into her bag and producing 3 small rubber balls, softly textured and colored like evening. The blue of dusk, the green of grass after rain, the marigold of a porch light. She pressed one into each pair of hands. These are feeling balls. When you're sad or scared or even so happy you can't sit still, you squeeze and tell the ball what's happening inside. It won't break. Then when you're ready, you let the feeling go a little. Not all at once, just enough to breathe. Ava rolled hers thoughtfully, already narrating. Sometimes my tummy hurts before bedtime, she confessed. Because the dark is too big. Nora nodded. The dark is big, but you are not alone in it. Junie squeezed hers until her knuckles whitened. I get mad when socks feel wrong, she burst out, embarrassed by her own honesty. Like my toes are yelling. Bodies talk, Nora said gently. We just learn their language. Pearl held hers like a secret and then, very quietly said, I worry people go and don't come back. The room grew still in that way good rooms do when truth enters. The stillness that is not empty, but attentive. Nora's hand found the back of Pearl's head, a soft cradle. Thank you for telling me, she murmured. Worries like that are heavy. We can carry them together. From the doorway, Caleb closed his eyes for a second, as if someone had put a warm hand on his chest. He hadn't known how to teach the invisible things. He was good at schedules and lists and the sturdy love of showing up, but this naming of feelings without spooking them, felt like a foreign language he had always hoped his daughters would learn. When the oven chimed, the kitchen filled with the perfume of butter surrendering to sugar. The cookies emerged cracked with promise and soft in the middle. They decorated with a chaos that could only be called holy. Sprinkles in improbable drifts. Frosting swirled with the intensity usually reserved for grand declarations. Nora refused to correct a single flourish. There's no such thing as too many stars, she said, and if she was talking about cookies, no one corrected her either. After sugar had spiked and dipped, they drifted to the couch for books. Nora read The Little Cloud That Could, and her voice made the words feel like they belonged to the girls before the story even finished. Ava pressed in close, absorbing the warmth like solar power. Junie leaned on Nora's knee and tried to touch every picture at least once. Pearl, halfway asleep and fiercely holding on, rested her head against Nora's heartbeat and surrendered the last of her vigilance. Halfway through the book, Pearl said, barely audible, Please don't leave again. Our hearts can't do that. It wasn't a plea so much as a fact, and facts spoken softly can sometimes undo a person faster than shouts. Nora tightened her arms around all three, the crown sliding askew in her hair, and answered without ceremony. I'm not going anywhere if I can help it. Night gathered at the edges of the windows, a blue that made the house feel like an island. After stories came teeth and pajamas, a gauntlet of life's smallest negotiations. Nora moved with the economy of someone who has shepherded many children through the small rituals that stand between day and rest. She let Ava pick between two pairs of pajamas to give the illusion of control. She made a game out of Junie's sock rebellion by pretending the sock monster demanded a polite request, and she sat on the edge of Pearl's bed long past the point when reason would have excused her. What if she needs us and we can't find her? Pearl asked the ceiling. Then we will light the porch. Nora said, and we will wait with Coco. Pearl's mouth flickered into a smile that wasn't quite ready to stay, but liked practicing. When all three finally surrendered to sleep, their breathing found that minute harmony parents memorize the way sailors memorize currents. Nora tucked stray curls behind small ears and stood for a long time in the hush that only rooms with sleeping children know. A hush that says you have done enough for now. She stepped into the hallway and found Caleb leaning against the wall, eyes gentle, mug now empty. They didn't speak for a few seconds because silence, too, can be companionable when it is not demanded. You make the house sound different, he said finally, as if he'd been saving the sentence like a good cookie for last. There's let's echo. Nora smiled with a fatigue that did not resent itself. You keep them loved and fed and on time. That's heroic, she said. I just add a soundtrack. They moved to the kitchen where the detritus of a perfect afternoon waited. Cooling racks, a battlefield of sprinkles, a dish towel that had given itself to the cause. Leave it, Caleb said. I can do it later. Nora shook her head. We can do it together and talk like people who remember how. He rinsed, she dried. They built small stacks of clean plates while confessing tiny truths. He told her about the morning the babysitter had canceled and his conference call had eaten half of his soul. She told him about the hospital elevator that still made her heart lurch at shift change because once, long ago, someone hadn't made it to the floor they needed in time. They did not fill in all the spaces. They did not need to. When the kitchen had regained its shape, they stood at the back door and looked out at the yard. The oak's branches were black brushstrokes against a navy sky. Somewhere beyond the fence, a neighbor's wind chime rang like someone practicing forgiveness. Caleb spoke without turning his head. They drew you on the family wall. I didn't know how to tell you without making it too much. Nora swallowed. It's already too much, she said softly, in the best and worst ways. He nodded, thoughtful. I don't want you to feel like you have to be anything you aren't, he said. They do enough wanting for all of us. I know, she answered. I don't want to be a promise I can't keep. The words landed between them with the weight of someone who knows what it costs to say yes. They didn't solve anything monumental at the door. They agreed to pancakes on Sunday and library hour on Wednesday, and that sometimes the only right plan is to have a plan you can abandon without guilt. Before she left, Nora walked down the hall to look at the framed drawing again. The 5 figures with their hand holding joy and the yellow-haired woman standing in the middle like a light left on purpose. She touched the glass with 2 fingers, a private benediction, then turned back toward the front door. At the threshold, Ava's voice piped from the darkened hallway, as if sleep had let her go just long enough to make sure the future was still within reach. Queen Mommy? She called. Yes, Your Majesty? Nora answered, playful without being careless. Will you be here tomorrow? Ava asked. Nora's throat tightened. She knelt so her answer would travel the right distance. Tomorrow pancakes, she said. And if pancakes get scared, we'll make waffles. Ava considered this logic, found it sound, and padded back to bed. On the porch, night air cooled the flower still clinging to Nora's wrists. Caleb stood with his hand on the door, a gentleman's instinct he hadn't unlearned. Thank you for staying long enough to ruin our kitchen, he said. Thank you for letting me, she replied. There was a pause, the kind that contains many possible worlds. Good night, Nora, he said. Good night, Caleb, she answered, and walked down the steps with the steadiness of someone who had decided, at least for now, to keep choosing the soft, complicated thing. Inside, 3 small chests rose and fell in their beds. And somewhere in the quiet, the glitter on the poster caught a streetlight and flashed once, like a tiny star that had decided to stay. The wind arrived first, shouldering the afternoon into evening before anyone agreed it was time. It carried the mineral smell of rain the way a hospital carries the faint scent of iodine. Warning and cleanliness braided together. Nora came earlier than usual because Caleb had called, apologetic, the low thrum of a downtown meeting in his voice. If you're up for it, he'd said, Bae, I'm stuck late. She'd said yes before her mind could protect her heart with excuses. Yes felt like a small, lit window. The house was almost quiet when she let herself in. The good kind of quiet, the kind stitched with the soft chatter of children not yet bored. Upstairs, Ava, Junie, and Pearl were making a campaign out of coloring. Somewhere a jar of crayons was earning its keep. Nora slipped off her shoes, set her bag by the doorway, and moved through the rooms gathering the debris of the day. Tiny hair ties, a plastic giraffe, a sock that had clearly chosen freedom until it didn't. She hummed as she worked, a fragment of some lullaby her bones remembered without asking. Miss Nora, Ava called from the top of the stairs, her voice a ribbon. Do you know where the pink paper went? We can't make crowns without pink. Nora looked around the living room. Construction paper lived in a box that lived in a closet that sometimes wandered. She checked the bookshelf cubbies, the art bin under the window seat. When she didn't find it, she tried the home office. She hesitated on the threshold the way people do at doorways into someone else's work. A respectful pause, a knock that is more thought than sound. Then she stepped in. Caleb's office wore the efficiency of a man who needed his brain to meet him halfway. Books in safety rows, files stacked with the precision of someone trying to tame the day. The desk was a ledger of responsibilities, laptop, calendar, a few photographs in simple frames. On a shelf, 3 clay lumps painted gold. Crowns, she knew, because the girls had announced them as such at breakfast one Saturday, like a press conference. The box of paper, she suspected, was the kind that hides in plain sight. She tugged at a stack of folders near the desk's edge to peer behind them. The top one slid. Paper spilled to the floor like startled birds. "Of course," Nora murmured, dropping to her knees. She reached for the sheets, gathering them by corners like you do when you need to make amends quickly. A photograph slipped free and landed face up by her shoe. She saw it, and the room tilted. A woman stood by a hospital window, one hand curved over the round sweep of her belly as if greeting the future. The light in the photo was the kind that blesses without promising anything. Late afternoon, soft and honest. The woman's face was open, the smile of someone trying to be brave for people she loves. Nora felt the recognition first in her stomach, then in the back of her throat. The eyes. There was a steadiness in them, she knew, the particular warmth of patients who thank you by name even when you have done nothing but adjust a pillow and hold their hand. A memory surfaced the way a submerged thing does when the tide lowers. Nora's hands began to tremble. "No," she said, quiet enough to be a wish. The office tightened around her. The photographs on the shelf blurred, and the hum of the refrigerator in the kitchen grew loud, then distant, then loud again. She sank into Caleb's chair because her knees had stopped pretending. For a moment, the thin membrane between present and past dissolved. 5 years earlier, St. Bridget's maternal ward had been a train station at midnight. Everybody waiting for arrivals and departures, nobody sure when. Nora was 22 and lived on adrenaline and granola bars, convinced that competence could keep sorrow away if you invited it in first. It was the third night of a double shift. The attending had been called to surgery. The monitor alarms were quiet in that dangerous way that makes you think you're safe. The patient in room 12 had smiled every time Nora stepped in, that particular gratitude that makes nurses apologize for the world. "Triplets," she had said laughing as if admitting to mischief. "Can you believe it? Mild preeclampsia, fluids running, numbers holding. She was exhausted, and exhaustion makes home sound like medicine." "Please," she'd said, fingers cool around Nora's wrist. "My husband's out on a call. He's a firefighter. I want to go home and sit in their room and breathe where they'll be." Nora had checked vitals again, recalculated risk like a prayer. The chart read stable. The room read steady. The attending was 3 floors away. The pager buzzed with 47 other needs. Nora had signed the line. "Discharged per patient request. Vitals stable. Return if dizzy or seeing spots." She'd smiled with the ache of kindness and offered a folded instruction sheet like a talisman. The next morning, whispers had moved along the ward with that peculiar mix of speed and apology. A maternity patient. Triplets. A seizure while driving. The car, the sirens, the delivery that saved 3 small lives because life sometimes insists on its own survival, even when it breaks your heart to watch. The mother gone. Nora had made it to a staff bathroom and put her head in her hands and then in a sink. Water and grief blur the same way if you let them. "You followed procedure," the attending had said later, voice as gentle as a reprimand could be. She made the choice. But procedure is a net that doesn't always catch the right things. And choice is a word too tidy for some nights. Nora had transferred to pediatrics within a month, grateful for tiny wrists and the durable hope of cartoon band-aids. She learned to love the beeping of monitors like a language you can stay fluent in as long as you don't translate it out loud. Now the photograph shook in her hands. Baseline tremor turned tidal. She could hear the girls upstairs arguing about whether a crown needed 5 points or 7. She could hear her own pulse behind her ears. She could see the face in the picture and the faces of the 3 small people who had run to her in a cafe and called her something she thought she no longer qualified to be. The room steadied enough for her to stand. She put the photograph on the desk with a care that bordered on apology. The feeling that rose in her was not the sharp spear of panic, but the slow, heavy pull of truth deciding to be told. She looked for paper and found it. She looked for a pen and chose one with a weight to it, as if a heavier instrument could make the words behave. "Caleb, there is something you don't know, and it belongs to you." Years ago, before pediatrics, I worked at St. Bridget's on the maternal ward. A patient pregnant with triplets asked to be discharged. She was stable. I was young and tired and alone on that decision, and I let her go. She had a husband who served, a soft laugh, and eyes like a promise. The next morning, there was a crash and a delivery that saved 3 lives and a death that didn't. I have carried her with me since. Tonight I found her photograph in your office. I did not know until now that your daughters are the babies from that night. I am so deeply sorry. I understand if you need distance, if this makes my presence here unbearable. I signed a line thinking I was doing right by her wish. I have been trying to sign different lines ever since. Nora. Tears spotted the page and spidered the ink. She let them. Some things deserve to leave a mark. She folded the letter in half and wrote his name on the front in the old-school script they taught her mother. The one that made names look almost ceremonial. She set it beside his coffee mug on the kitchen table where he would not miss it. The girls were quiet now, in the way of children heavy with play. Nora climbed the stairs on feet that felt both hers and borrowed. She paused at the doorway to their room. 3 small bodies tangled on the rug around a fortress of paper crowns. The box of pink construction paper recovered and conquered. Ava's hand rested on Pearl's ankle like a tether. Junie's shoe was half off in the heroic way of a person who had simply run out of day. Nora knelt and brushed curl and cheek with the reverence grief teaches you to practice while you still can. "I'm sorry," she breathed, a promise and an apology. She kissed each forehead delicately as if the skin would remember. Downstairs, the rain began in earnest. A soft insistence on roof and glass like 1,000 small hands asking to come in. Nora took her coat from the hook. The house smelled like sugar baked into wood, like new crayons and something green from the yard. She stood a second too long in the hallway because leaving is sometimes a muscle you have to convince. Then she opened the door and stepped into the storm. On the porch, the wind tugged at her cardigan like a friend begging her to reconsider. The street lamp turned the rain silver, and for a moment it looked like the world was trying to bless her, then like it was trying to wash her away. She walked anyway, shoulders rounded against the weather, the soft crown the girls had made for her earlier, now a memory her hair refused to forget. At the corner, she looked back once. The house glowed the way safe houses do. Light at the windows, solidity in the bones, laughter stored in the beams for later. She wanted to memorize it. The shape of a life she had held for a minute like a fragile thing that might be hers if the story had been kinder. She turned and kept walking because sometimes love is not the staying. It is the telling the truth that might ruin your chances and save your soul. By the time she reached the bus stop, her hair had surrendered to the weather, and the hem of her jeans held rain like a confession. She sat, folded her hands around nothing, and waited for a vehicle that would take her somewhere that was not here. She did not try to stop the shaking. She knew better than to argue with grief in public. It has its own schedule, and it rarely allows for dignity. Back at the house, the letter rested beside the coffee mug like a small country declaring itself. Upstairs, 3 girls dreamed without knowing a fault line had opened below the quiet ground they trusted. In the office, the photograph watched no one. Its subject smiling toward a window that held a sky now 5 years gone. Nora fixed her gaze on the dark, on the permission it sometimes grants. The rain stitched a curtain between what had been and what would now have to be. She breathed into the ache until it widened and, in widening, made just enough room to sit inside it. Caleb came home to the kind of quiet that isn't rest but aftermath. A hush set carefully over a room so it won't wake what's fragile. He shook the rain from his jacket, toeing off his shoes with the absent-minded care of a man whose hands were still sorting through the day. The house smelled like butter gone sweet in the oven, and the faint metallic scent storms drag in. On the kitchen table, beside his half-finished coffee, a folded note stood like a small, brave building with his name on the front in an elegant hand. He knew before he opened it that the world was about to rearrange. He sat. The chair creaked in a way that made him think of summers at his grandparents' lake house when Wood talked back like an old friend. He unfolded the paper. As he read, there was no flare of anger, only a slow undercurrent pulling him towards something he had always suspected lived beneath the surface. The knowledge that love, in this house, was stitched to loss in ways that couldn't be untied. He set the letter down and smoothed it with his palm,